Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villeries Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villeries provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villeries Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Dave Miette Insurance Agency, 504-556-0809 or davemietteINSagency.com.
For over 48 years, Southern Tires and Auto Repair has provided services across the New Orleans metro area. Southern Tires offers a range of tires for all vehicles and ATVs. We also have a full suite of auto repair options, including brake repair, rim repair, custom exhaust, steering and suspension, tire siping, and so much more. Southern Tires and Auto Repair, 2550 Hickory Avenue in Metairie.
C&C Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, C&C provides patient-centered care for your entire family. C&C Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. We are live from our state-of-the-art Pontchartrain production studios. And of course, you can check us out on, as you are right now, on WLAE-TV. But also don't forget now, we live stream each and every Thursday on the WLAE-TV YouTube page at 1 p.m. So again, you catch us over the airwaves on WLAE-TV, but also live streaming right now on our WLAE-TV YouTube page. Over the next hour, we're going to cover all the home teams. Going to go very, very heavy Saints. It is, again, draft day number 1. So we'll go heavy with the Saints, but we'll also talk about the Pelicans, LSU, Tulane, all that coming up on the program. Award-winning journalist Brett Martel of the Associated Press is our guest tonight. Brett, how you doing?
Good.
Good to see you. It's been a while.
Yep.
And before we get started, tell us a little bit about the AP and what you're doing for those for that fine publication.
All right. Well, sure. The AP is, like a not-for-profit news cooperative based in New York City. It's been around since 1846, so celebrating 175 years this year. And we have bureaus all over the country and all over the world. And so I'm kind of the New Orleans-based sports writer and do everything from Saints to Pelicans, LSU, Zurich Classic last week, and so forth. Yeah.
Of course, at times you've also dabbled in the news side. Do you have a preference?
Well, I did news for my first 10 years in AP and then went to sports full-time in 2006. And, I wouldn't say I have a preference, but I certainly enjoyed my time in news and could see myself in the future maybe doing more of that.
More news? Yeah. Well, again, we were just talking before the show about the radio show. I'm still doing sports, but still dabbling in a lot of news as well. And I really enjoy doing the news and politics as well as the sports. So I like to keep my hand in it.
Especially in Louisiana and New Orleans.
Yes.
I mean, it's so interesting. Whether you're talking about politics or culture.
Right.
There's a lot of extraordinary things to.
So much going on, no doubt about it. Start off with the Saints. The word is, since the Crow came out this morning, is that the Saints are trying to move into the top 10. Been multiple reports from national correspondents around the NFL that Mickey Loomis is making phone calls to try to get into the top 10. He said in his press conference yesterday they're looking for quality over quantity, which is something, again, they normally do. What are your thoughts on the possibility of them moving up? And then we'll kind of get into maybe some players.
Right. Well, they traded multiple picks last year and ended up reducing their overall number of picks in order to go for quality over quantity. And he wouldn't be, I'm talking about Mickey, he wouldn't be doing his due diligence if he didn't, sitting at 28th, call everybody and say, what are you looking for those picks? And I'll see if I can give it to you, relative to how much they value the players that might be available at those picks. And obviously, they do need a cornerback. Hopefully, everything with Marshawn Lattimore will turn out okay with his arrest and everything. And if he's able to come back and play, they will need probably a top-tier starting cornerback on the other side, having had to cut loose Jonas Jenkins for financial reasons. And so, I know we were talking before the show about J.C. Horn and Patrick Surtain. And, there would be some considerable benefits to trading, certainly a first-round pick this year and possibly next year, to getting those guys, only because, you have to pay Lattimore next year if you want to keep him, maybe this offseason really for the extension.
True.
And, a first-round pick, as we discussed, you've got a guy on the rookie scale for 4 to 5 years. If he's worth picking up the option, hopefully he is. And that allows you to really just be paying for one top-tier cornerback while having two for, the next couple seasons, and that can really be beneficial.
No, I agree with you, and we were talking about that before the show. Again, because of the opportunity to keep a first-round pick for 5 years, picking up that fifth-year option, you've got him on a rookie-scale contract for the most part for at least 4 of those 5 years, with a little bit of a bump in the 5th year. The question is, and I posed this to you as we were talking before the show, is if you're willing to go up and you're willing to move up that high, you're going to give up next year's number 1 pick. There's just no other way around it. And then the question is a Patrick Surtain, is a J.C. Horn worth 2 number 1 draft picks? Even if you're picking in the late 20s, which is really a glorified second-round pick. So maybe the Saints are looking at this saying, look, this is a glorified second-round pick. I'm giving up 2 second-round picks to be able to go up and get a top 10 player. Is it worth giving up, again, your first-round pick 2 years in a row? And that's the big question.
Right, and there's a risk to it, okay? So if you get the guy and he doesn't necessarily work out or has a rough season, or you have a rough season, then the next year's pick that you gave away is maybe a top 15 pick, right?
Right.
But if you get the guy and you have a good season, and the Saints think they're still a playoff caliber team, maybe not 1 or 2 seed, but maybe 6 or 7.
Right.
You need to be in the top 7 now to get in. And they're, the over/under, I think, in Vegas is right around 9.5, which isn't bad for a 17-game season. It means that they're going to be in the mix.
Yes.
Or at least that's what the odds makers think. So if you end up meeting those expectations, well, then this year's first-round pick was a glorified second-round pick, and so maybe next year's also. And so if that's what you're giving away for a top-tier corner that's going to be on the rookie scale for the next 4 years, then it's worth it. But obviously, you won't know until it's all played out.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Peyton has look. There were a lot of us, myself included, in when Peyton got here, that again came from that Parcell, got cut from that Parcell cloth. The season of misinformation. We always felt like, again, you had to read between the lines of what Peyton was trying to say. Within the last few years, he pretty much has told you what he's going to do. I mean, he's pretty much come out and said it. He said at the Zurich, as you were there interviewing him, cornerback is a position of need. I got to believe that's got to be their target in the first round. Your thoughts?
I suspect so. If they're going to trade up, they're going to probably take the top cornerback on their board. Or, if there's a couple guys that are both in that they see, like, for example, Horn and Surtain, if they say, well, both of those guys are in the same level and one of them is available and we can get that pick, we'll take it. You would think, because that would be an immediate need where they could also get a best available, because they're really trying to get best available as well as immediate need.
No doubt.
And the reason is because, you're investing in these guys for a several-year period, and so you can't just think about how it affects your team next year, and so that's why they would do that, and it would probably be worth it to them. For Peyton, I mean, I guess he has the benefit of having given misinformation for so long that even when he does tell it to you straight, nobody believes him, so he can say whatever he wants.
It's true. It's the truth. It really is. After he says it, he does it, you kind of go back and go, well, he did tell us that, but nobody believed it. There's no doubt about it. It looks like Dallas at 10 is looking for a corner. Philadelphia at 12 is looking for a corner. And if you're not going to go for the top 2, then you got to look at, I think it's 17, the Arizona Cardinals are looking for a corner. So there's your box if you're going to go up and get one of the top 3 corners.
Yeah. Well, Arizona did sign Malcolm Butler, right? So, where they are, they may have more flexibility, right? But yeah, I think you want to you're right. I think they're going to need to trade up. We're looking at more than 10 spots.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which again, you're going to pay a pretty price for.
Yeah.
Now again, look, they've got the extra third round picks, which again will help if they decide to go up. But again, if you're going to move into the top 10, top 12, you're probably giving up next year's number 1. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Quarterback. You think there's a possibility that that's something they're looking at as well, if they're willing to trade up into that top 10? Again, they've talked about Jameis Winston, Hill. Both Mickey and Peyton have said that they're very happy with their quarterback room. They don't have that young quarterback of the future. But look, both the guys. Look, when you look at Jameis Winston, he's still a young quarterback. He's got a lot of tread left on that tire. Hill is in his 30s. I think he's more of a jack of all trade guy. He's going to get every opportunity to be able to start. Is that a possibility in your mind? And again, maybe they see a quarterback they like, and that's what they're going up to try to get, or is it the cornerback in your mind?
Well, I think that there's a possibility if they have a really high grade on a quarterback that falls out of the top 10, and they think, this is the kind of guy that can give us the same formula we've used for the previous 15 years, that they may want to seize that opportunity. It's hard to really know, and the thing is, unlike Drew Brees, a lot of these guys haven't played as many seasons as he played,
right,
and haven't really demonstrated the consistent kind of character and team leadership. I mean, the kid at Alabama did a hell of a job.
Mac Jones.
Mac Jones, yeah. And I kept wanting to say Mac Brown, but I knew that's not him. It's a different generation. But he also had extraordinary receivers,
Yes.
and an extraordinary offensive line.
Right.
And it's just kind of hard to know how a quarterback who has NFL receivers and an NFL offensive line in college is going to do at the next level.
Right. It's true.
So I think cornerback is in some ways a more measurable position.
Let's talk needs, because, I mean, again, when you look at it, you got to say cornerback, linebacker. Wide receiver, I would think, would be a need. Interior defensive line would be a need. Mickey Loomis said something that really caught my ear yesterday in his press conference. Pardon me. They like the quarterback position, and they like some quarterbacks late as well. So and that really caught my ears. I was thinking, well, maybe they got their eye on somebody, third, fourth round that they think can come in, and maybe they can groom for the future. Maybe not. But I think when you look at guys that they need to plug and play, to me, cornerback, linebacker are two positions they need now.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, having released Quan Alexander as well, and then letting Alexander Deloney go in free agency, cornerback is definitely a need. Linebacker, I mean, I think you could see them going defense there, and even defensive tackle.
Me too.
So
Does he nose tackle? Because again, the loss of Malcolm Brown.
Right, Malcolm Brown, and then of course, you allowed your former
Sheldon Rankins,
first-round pick out of Louisville to go.
Right.
Yeah, so that's not as urgent, but there is a depth issue there, so I wouldn't be surprised to see them address that. Quarterback, you think about the late round picks that have been really good. I think Russell Wilson would qualify, and certainly Tom Brady.
Right.
But even those guys, I mean, I think Russell Wilson did end up playing as a rookie, if I remember right, but Tom Brady didn't play his first year at all and came in as a substitute behind Bledsoe in the third game of his second season. So when you're talking about a player that you hope will turn out like one of those guys, you're probably talking about a guy that you don't expect to play this year. But that you think, has a lot of upside. Just hasn't really. The reason he's not a first-round pick is because he hasn't quite fulfilled his potential yet on tape, and so no one's going to risk a high-round pick on him.
It's a different draft. It's a different draft because they didn't have the combine. You haven't had a chance to be able to go in and interview guys one-on-one at the facility, work those guys out. You're basically relying on tape that you've seen throughout the career, Zoom meetings, and also their pro day. And the Saints have been very, very hands-on. And again, they normally, you hear Peyton say this all the time, and it rings in my ear constantly, a vision for a player. They have a vision for a player, but in a lot of cases, again, I think they tie that with a bow after they get a chance to be able to, again, get these in-person meetings, get a chance to be able to, again, see the medical, what's going on there. And of course, the combine is huge, whether it's medical or, again, obviously the timing of that goes on there as far as the skill positions. How much do you think this affects the Saints going? And look, it affects all teams, but the Saints particularly.
Well, I think I would say that it might affect the Saints less than most teams, just because I feel like they are really, with their way their system is set up, they're as equipped as any other team to adjust to things like this. I think they've done a really good job scouting. I guess in terms of the interpersonal feel for the player and the character situation, and they talk about really wanting guys that don't just have a skill set and some certain strengths that fit their roster or fit how they want to play, but also they want them to fit into the locker room and fit the kind of the personality of the team. That would be the one area where I'm not sure off of a Zoom that you could get it, but you probably could get it from not just interviewing them, but interviewing everybody around them.
True.
I mean, I think the Saints are pretty adept at getting a lot of references and stuff like that. I don't know. Peyton always struck me as and I don't have all the details, but he always strikes me as a cutting-edge coach in that regard. So I wouldn't underestimate his ability to handle these circumstances better than most teams.
There's been a lot of talk out there that, again, the Saints kind of did a slow drag on free agency, not because they didn't have, obviously because they didn't have the cap money available, but also because, again, they're valuing compensatory picks now. With, again, the draft commencing tonight, again, those compensatory picks obviously belong to the Saints. Do you expect them to be very aggressive after the draft, going after veterans, and specifically a veteran cornerback, maybe a linebacker, that you can plug and play if necessary, rather than to rely on a rookie to have to come in and have to man one of those two positions?
I think that it'll depend on what they get in the draft.
Okay.
But, I mean, you have to have a plan for addressing the needs that you didn't fill in the draft. And, I think if you listen to Sean Payton when he was so open about saying cornerback is a need we have to address, he said before training camp. Right. He didn't say next week.
Right. He said before training camp.
Yeah.
Which led me to believe that, again, they're in the market. But I think a lot of us figured that. The Marshawn Lattimore situation, even if it's pled down and he does community service, which is a possibility because, again, he's never been in trouble before, the NFL is going to give him a suspension. They're going to, either it's 1 or 2 games, they're going to suspend him, okay? The precedent has been set there already. So you need a veteran corner. I mean, no matter what.
Right.
You need another veteran corner.
Now, they still do have
P.J. Williams
and Patrick Robinson.
Right.
I mean,
P.J.'s more of a guy that they like at the safety position.
Yeah.
Okay. Patrick Robinson played well last year in a pinch.
Yeah.
But again, he's another year older, though.
Right, and he always seems to get nicked up.
Right.
But, it'll be early. If Lattimore suspended, it'll be early in the season. Hopefully, those guys will be healthy.
Right.
I mean, maybe they'll have a plan to really dial back the physical stress in the corners, especially the veteran corners during training camp, to try to minimize their exposure to injury and just at least hope for the first couple of games you got the full complement.
Right. Also, again, when you look at the draft, one thing that Mickey talked about was quality over quantity. But to me, this year, the undrafted free agents are really going to be big for this team, because the ability to be able to have those guys fill in, maybe as in backup roles, or the opportunity to have them play special teams. Saints took a few losses on special teams, and again, where they really got hurt is really their quality depth.
Yes. Yeah. They had a lot of. They had a lot of guys. I mean, I thought their special teams play, they had a lot of really heady players on there. Josh Hill would come to mind immediately. They still have Dwayne Washington at running back, I think, that's going to be back and be able to play there.
Craig lost Justin Hardy.
Was a really
huge.
Good one. Now, they did maintain Gray, right?
Yes.
JT Gray.
They signed him back.
Who blocked a punt, didn't he, a couple of years ago? So, we'll see. I mean, I can't imagine Taysom Hill's going to be playing anymore.
Well, that's what I was going to make my next question.
Yeah.
What's his role now? Because let's say he does not, and I want to go into Jameis. Let's bridge to that now. I believe Jameis Winston's going to be a starting quarterback for this team.
A lot of people do.
Okay, but let's just say again that it happens. He wins the job. At that point, do you not utilize Taysom Hill, jack of all trades? To me, you're hurting yourself if you don't. And does that include again him being on special teams?
Well, I think if Jameis Winston wins the starting job, he has to be prepared to be involved in an offense that looks similar to last year's. Right? Where they can do change of pace, especially on 3rd and short, or just wherever they feel like the defense is playing in a certain way where there's just an obvious advantage in a read option run. They need to be able to do that. And they would do that anyway, I think, if Taysom Hill is the starter. So, and getting back to the quarterbacks, Jameis Winston is pretty young. And so, if he does win the starting job, of course, and if the Saints really think he's going to be able to do that, that again gets back to the draft and not really having an urgency to pick one.
Right.
Yeah.
But again, if you allow Taysom to go back to his jack of all trade role, you need a solid backup as well. The offense changes dramatically in terms of the scheme when you go to a Taysom Hill to a Jameis Winston. And then the question is, again, what are they going to do in training camp? Are they running 2 different systems? Does Taysom have to adapt to the Brees system that, again, was left behind? We always heard that if ultimately Taysom was going to be the starter, that the system would be tweaked to the strengths of Taysom Hill, which are different than the strengths of Jameis Winston.
Right. But I honestly think that the Sean Payton offense going forward is going to be designed partly around Jameis. It's not going to be like fitting Jameis Winston into Brees' role. I think he's just going to try to figure out what Jameis Winston does well.
I agree.
And just make the majority of plays things that where he's strong.
Yes.
Or if Taysom Hill ends up getting the job, then it'll be that way.
Right.
But
it's two different schemes. That's the thing. That's the interesting thing about this training camp.
Yeah.
Because it's not like you're going in with a play like Brees and then a backup that, again, is, I don't want to say a clone of Brees, but again, can play in the same type of system. The strengths of the two guys are diametrically different when you look at it in terms of the ability to be able, Taysom's ability to be able to run. Jameis can run some, but again, more of a guy that can get himself out of trouble to be able to deliver the football. Both guys can throw the ball deep, which is something we haven't seen with Brees for a while. But to me, it's a different. You're going to be utilizing different skill sets with either quarterback.
So I don't think, in terms of the strict passing plays called, that they're necessarily dramatically different players.
Okay.
I think that they can both make those throws.
I agree.
And it's a matter of, and really who's going to get the job is who's doing a better job making those reads and delivering the ball on time.
And not turning the ball over.
Yeah, and not turning the ball over. A lot of, the weird thing is that Jameis Winston's history of turning the ball over is on making risky throws, whereas Taysom Hill's history of turning the ball over is just not protecting the ball.
Right, fumbling the ball.
When he's running.
Yes.
If you look at the ratio of sacks to snaps last year when they did play, obviously Drew Brees didn't get sacked nearly as much as either one of them. And I'm talking about
getting the ball out quickly.
Yeah, I'm not talking about overall sacks. Right. For the year, I'm talking about sacks per snap. Right?
Yes.
So those guys are gonna, there's a learning curve for both of those guys still, and that's why I think it's going to be an interesting year, and it's also going to be a year I think where fans are required to have some patience because I think the team will evolve during the season.
All right, let's talk about Drew Brees. You got a chance to cover him his entire time here in New Orleans. Just your overall thoughts of what he meant to this organization, what he meant to the city. And then I want to get into, again, this vacuum of not having Brees in this locker room now. And again, how you turn the page on that. But this is the first time we've had an opportunity to talk about Drew Brees.
Well, I always found him to be, just as a journalist, an extraordinarily helpful team leader. He was very patient with everybody's questions and patient in the way he answered them. He generally wasn't very terse or curt in his answers. He seemed to, there would even be times when I think, we could be talking here and something we say doesn't come out quite the way we meant it. Right. And sometimes questions in a scrum of reporters around a player might not come out right. And some players will just kind of look at you and say, can you repeat the question? Right. Drew would always, you could always see him kind of looking up and his wheels are turning and thinking, okay, I got the subject matter, and if this was a good question, what would my answer be? And then he would answer like that.
Yes.
You know, like just never kind of try to intimidate anybody who was asking a question or really show any kind of attitude or anything like that. And I think that it showed that he understood the role of how, you know, his platform and how the media could be something he could use to strengthen his connection and the team's connection to the fans. And he was really good, I think, at using a combination of not just his stellar play, but his leadership ability, his community service, and his really good relationship with the media to become a transcendent athlete in a community, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he was, you know, he's a player that I think there's probably going to be a statue of him at some point somewhere.
You got to believe it.
Yeah, and you know, he seems to be destined for the Hall of Fame, and maybe that'll be the time to put something up somewhere near the Superdome, or maybe even somewhere else where his community service transformed a block or a ball field or a school or something.
Yeah.
You know, and I always like the fact that he bought a house uptown, a house that needed work, and renovated it and kind of brought back to glory, you know, just a handsome structure near Audubon Park, and he was really living the New Orleans life that people really love about New Orleans. People who've lived here a long time really love about it, and he understood it. You know, my daughter has played on the playground that he built in Audubon Park. I mean, I could just go on and on, you know. Not to mention that, you know, he has like the record for completion percentage, and the record he broke was his own. And then this year he was 70.5% while he was hurt, which still would rank somewhere in the top 10 all time. You know, I mean, so if you talk about somebody understanding the limitations and then maximizing what they had to work with, regardless of what their health was or how tall they were or how strong their arm was. I mean, he was just I think, a tremendous professional and a real pillar of the organization, way beyond just his, you know, being the QB on the roster. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. You're in this locker room, well, you were before the pandemic, and we expect again, hopefully again, with things opening up and people getting vaccinated, that you'll have an opportunity to get back into the locker room again. How do the Saints fill this vacuum? I mean, again, he was the guy for 15 years. He set the tone. Yes, they have other leaders in that locker room. There's no doubt about it. And some have become much more boisterous and become maybe bigger leaders within the locker room as he has kind of moved on, got ready to move on into his post NFL career. But bigger than life, and a guy that commanded so much respect, and a guy that set the tone for this team. How do they fill that vacuum?
You know, it's going to be interesting. I think that they do have some people who, such as Demario Davis, for example. Now, he's a defensive player, but he was that was the guy when Brees was out that would run the little pregame chant where they would all gather around. I mean, that's a guy that's respected on and off the field.
Cam Jordan is another.
Cam Jordan is another one. You know, so I'm not worried about the leadership on defense.
How about Teron Armstead on offense?
Teron Armstead could be a guy on offense that could really hold it together. You know, but you're talking about
even Alvin Kamara's tried to take more of a leadership role last year, right?
I think you're going to need a skill player too that's going to be able to do it, and Kamara is also, I find, to be a very charismatic figure.
Yes.
You know, I mean, people really like him. I mean, he is his own guy. Sometimes seems to be living in his own reality,
right?
But he makes it work.
Yes, he does.
You know, and so I think, you know, it's nobody can try to be what Drew Brees was. They just have to kind of figure out what is their best leadership style, and you know, there's just no replacing a guy like Drew Brees. They're just going to have to make the best of what they have and hope that that the combination of talent and the new leaders they have and the way the ball bounces is enough for a compelling season where they make a run.
Yeah, but you know, there's one thing that you can't duplicate without, again, somebody doing it on the field, but that is that feeling that we've had here for 15 years, that no matter what was going on in that game, you were never out of it.
Yeah.
you always felt like you had a chance with Brees behind center to take you back and win the game. And you, in a lot of cases, you were surprised when he didn't.
Right. Yeah, they had some stunning comebacks, and then
Right.
they had a lot of games where they were down by a lot and almost pulled it off.
Right.
Yeah, there's numerous examples of those. But the ones that come to mind most, I think, maybe his last game in San Diego, that was a crazy comeback,
Yes.
if I remember right. I mean, there was a game in 2006 in Washington, unbelievable comeback.
Well, look at the playoff
and,
games. Getting down, coming back, defense really giving up the plays.
Not 2006, sorry, 2009 I meant.
Right.
Also Miami.
Yes,
And then,
Miami was incredible.
And then the playoff game that they ended up losing in Minnesota you're
Right,
talking about, right? The playoff game that they ended up losing in San Francisco.
Right, Rams too.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, again, remember they had. So I mean, you were really never out of a game with Brees. So that's something that, look, one of the quarterbacks has to emerge to be that guy. You mentioned Jameis Winston, 111 turnovers in his career. That, again, taking chances. He said he's going to be a guy that is going to take care of the football. He's not going to be a guy that takes a lot of chances. It's good to hear that. But once you get on the field, we got to see that.
Yeah, you have to see that.
You have to see that.
What he said that I found the most interesting, and he said it in the context of learning from Drew Brees, is that he's learning how to look for the throw that makes the most sense, not the throw that he wants to complete.
There you go.
It was something of that. It wasn't.
Yeah, well, that wasn't
that was
the context.
Yeah,
Right.
that was the essence. Is
Right.
based on how the defense is lined up. You know, when I take the snap, what throw is the most likely throw to succeed?
Right.
Not what's the throw that I'd really like to make.
Right.
Which I think is, you know, he was a gunslinger.
He was.
And very talented, and he had some big, talented receivers on the outside, and he would go for it.
I agree.
And sometimes he was going for it with not very good blocking in front of him, and
True.
maybe his mechanics weren't very sound
there's no doubt about that.
because his
He was
feet
on
were
the
moving.
run. Right.
Yeah. So, you know, and I have to believe that Sean Payton, as a coach who's good with offense and played quarterback and obviously has had some success with quarterbacks, is thinking the exact same thing, that if I can get him to make the right read and to have his goal often be, or usually be,
Right.
what throw is going to make the most sense based on what I see as I'm getting the snap. Maybe, you know, he'll be throwing, you know, he'll be stepping into his throws, and he'll be properly aligned,
Yep.
and he'll
And
be
which is a lot
putting
of
the
it,
ball
Brett.
on the money. Yeah.
The mechanics, so if
Yeah.
you go back and look at him and you look at the bad throws, they are either my arm can beat the DB because I'm that good,
Yeah.
or my mechanics are bad and you know, I'm overthrowing it or I'm throwing in a bad spot. That's something that can be fixed with coaching. But again, and also you got to have that mentality. He said it. I was a gunslinger. I'm going to be a game manager. And you know, again, that was a kind of a taboo label at one time. But Brees and this offense made it so, you know, again, one of the greatest of all time, and what he's able to do here. We'll see how it plays out. As we wrap up the Saints and go to break, if you had to rank for the draft over the next couple days, well, again, the needs of this team, top five, what would they be?
I guess it would be cornerback, linebacker, defensive tackle, tight end. And I don't want to say offensive line. They really just lost Nick Easton, but I just feel like offensive line depth is even more important now.
Yes.
When you're making a change at quarterback than it might have been before. So I don't want to undervalue offense. I want to at least put that in the top five.
Is wide receiver in your bullpen? I mean, again,
Well,
right now you got Michael Thomas, Traquan Smith, who again really has to have a breakout year, and then you got a lot of guys that you've groomed that were undrafted free agents, and that's it.
Right. I thought Emmanuel Sanders was a loss.
Right.
But if Michael Thomas is healthy, I think Traquan Smith has at times shown flashes of possibly being really good. He needs to be consistently healthy, but he's definitely maturing. You could end up having two really good receivers and then hope that one of those young ones comes along.
Right.
I'm not really sure. And the young ones that they have also have made some nice plays
Callaway?
intermittently. Yeah,
Little Jordan Humphrey?
Right, and little Jordan Humphrey's a big dude too. You know, like
which
he
is
can go up and get the ball.
And that's one thing
Yeah.
Winston likes. He likes big, fast receivers.
Yeah, so I think they really like a lot of that, those guys that have been on the practice squad or getting little chances in the active roster here and there. So I'm not sure. You know, I know they have liked some of their offensive linemen too that have been on the practice squad and so forth. But I think that I would still put offensive line in front of receiver.
Brett Martel, the Associated Press, is our guest. Brett, before I go and move off the Saints, do you have a pick for tonight? Do you have Do you have a prediction? Or is it really too tough because we don't know where they're going to pick?
I think it's really hard.
How about a
right
position
now.
then?
But I would say, because I think there's about 4 cornerbacks that they could possibly pick in the first round. Right. So that's the most likely.
Surtain, Newsome, Horn, and Farley look like the top 4.
Even though I'm not sure how important edge rusher is, because they still theoretically have 2 starters back, even though they lost their leading guy, and Trey Hendrickson. Again, Trey Hendrickson had a really great year, and he may turn out to be a great player, but he's been here for 4 years, and I hadn't really seen that before, and I'm not really sure if he's going to sustain it or what.
Yes.
But they could, if edge rusher is the best available, I wouldn't be surprised to see them go that way too.
I made a bold prediction on the radio show this week that I would not be surprised if, again, they're dangling Marcus Davenport out there as a possible trade bait to be able to try to move up. Going into his 5th-year option, Mickey was non-committal on yesterday, again saying they were going to give him his 5th-year option. We'll see. He's a guy that has to really come into his own this year. They need him desperately. We'll see how it kind of plays out. Brett Martel, the Associated Press, is our guest. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Let's hear from our underwriters. We'll come back. We'll talk Pelicans. We'll talk the college game. All that coming up here on Inside New Orleans Sports. Stay tuned.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Experiencing rough weather with a bad roof can be a nightmare. It doesn't have to be.
Suburban Roofing, because when it comes to roofing, there is a difference.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Brett Martel, the Associated Press, award-winning journalist, is with us this afternoon. All right, let's go to Pelicans. 27-35. They are in 11th place. They're 4 games out of the 10th spot with 10 games remaining. They lost a heartbreaker last night to Denver, one of many heartbreakers they've lost this year. Last night, 114-112 in Denver. Zion Williamson gets karate chopped by Jokic, going up for the game-tying basket. Referee looking right at it, no call. They showed it from several angles last night on the broadcast. And again, I don't know how you don't call that, but it is what it is. Pelicans are now in a position where they're still trying to claw back. The only maybe saving grace they have right now, if at all, is they play 3 games against the Golden State Warriors, again, who has the 10th spot right now, that may be giving them an opportunity to maybe jump. But, you're 4 games out now with 10 games to play, and you're really just clawing yourself to try to be able to get into playoff, into that play-in tournament at this point. Your thoughts on the possibility of this team making the play-in tournament with 10 games left and 4 games out?
It would seem to be remote, and only because it's not because they're not really good enough, but they just seem to keep losing these close games. It's just. Right. I remember.
Can you put your finger on why? Is it? You would say in some cases maybe veteran leadership, but. Even that is kind of head scratching. They just can't close. They just can't. They can play well, get back into a game, but when it comes down to crunch time, they don't have the ability to close.
Yeah, and maybe last night's game, weren't they trailing by around 10 points?
They
for a
were,
lot of
but
that
they had
game?
a furious comeback in the fourth quarter.
Right. And
a furious comeback. They really played. They had, I mean, defensively, of course, there was some turnovers by Denver down the stretch.
Yeah.
But look, the tail of the tape this year has been you get the Pelicans in the last 5 minutes of a game, and more than likely you're going to overtake them and win.
Right. Yeah, that has been the story this year. I think it's a combination of things, and maybe what they're good at, like you mentioned, not getting the foul call. And you know how every now and then can be a little bit harder to get the call at the end of a game.
Yes.
Now, with the possibility for review last night, I mean, if there was any doubt in the officials' mind, they probably should have called the foul.
Yes.
And then reviewed it.
True. Blow the whistle and then review.
And if it wasn't a foul, then it's like, okay, he missed the shot, whatever, and Denver wins.
And that was the issue that I think a lot of people had, was because if you blow the whistle, then it has the opportunity to again have it replayed.
Yeah.
Okay. But by not blowing the whistle, at that point, it's a moot point.
I think that it depends how long these officials have been doing it.
Right.
I'm sure it's ingrained in them. I don't want to decide the game.
Yes.
And they forget that, but you're not deciding the game here because you can review and say, oh, it wasn't a foul, forget it. You know what I mean? But they couldn't do that before.
Right.
And they didn't want to mistakenly call a foul and give a team the easy way out of tying or taking the lead at the end on the foul line. Although it's not necessarily easy to make foul shots in a pressure-packed situation like that. But I think the officials are going to have to get used to the idea of really anticipating the foul at the end of games and being ready to blow the whistle.
Don't be afraid to blow the whistle.
and then knowing that you can review it
We've seen a little bit of that in the NFL.
Because,
Right.
Certainly we have, and I think that even though it can be annoying to watch a game end that way, if most people come away thinking they got it right in the end, then the integrity of the sport is upheld. And in a situation like last night, maybe the integrity of the sport was undermined a little bit. But so that being said, though, when you think about the Pelicans haven't had the kind of consistent outside shooting that you'd like for them to have. So, you can't really rely on them to come back or win a game with the three. You can rely on them to get a good look on the inside like they did last night, but if the officials are still having that mindset where I'm not calling the easy foul, it becomes that much harder to execute.
Yes.
And then maybe that has a little bit to do with it, because that's really where their strength lies, is near the basket. I mean, if you look at the points in the paint, I mean, it's like between 50 and sometimes 70 on the box score, points in the paint every game.
Right, top team in terms of offensive rebounding.
And then combine that, combine their strength with their relative youth, and the fact that this coach is a first-year coach for them. He's a veteran coach, but he's a first-year coach for them. He's of a different generation, a different demographic, and they've had all these pandemic rules where they can't really spend a lot of time bonding together and practice as much. And you could put all that together, and I think that it thins your margin for error at the end of these games, and that may be why.
The season as a whole, if they don't make the play-in tournament, and it looks remote at this point, is it a lost season, or is this a season that you laid it out. The inability to practice. You're bringing in a brand new coach. He's got to put a new system in. The system that he puts in is more of a defensive-centric system. Got young guys that don't know how to play defense on this team. Even the veterans that know how to play defense seem to again have amnesia when it comes to playing defense. Eric Bledsoe. All right.
Not to name names.
Yeah, not one name. Right. So, but all these, the lack of practice time, and again, look, you mentioned he's a guy that will grind you in practice, but for a young team that's learning how to play in the NBA, again, I get the concept of what Griff wanted. That's what he wanted. He wanted a teacher. But again, he didn't get a chance to teach. Is it a lost season considering, again, we've seen Chris Paul walk out the door after the second contract, Anthony Davis pushed his way out after the second contract, and everybody in this town has got this clock going on with Zion, worried about this team has to be a championship caliber team, or Zion, another once-in-a-generation player, will walk out the door. Or is this, do you give them a little bit of a mulligan this year because of COVID-19?
Well,
because every team had to deal with it.
Yeah, every team had to deal with it.
Even young teams had to deal with it. Look at Phoenix.
Yeah.
Now, of course, they got Chris Paul. That was the big difference there.
Yeah. And, Devin Booker, who's one of their really productive scorers, has been in the league a lot longer than Zion. I mean, he's really more of a refined scorer. They have some different tools there. And Monty Williams is clearly a pretty good coach.
Was a good coach here.
Maybe should have.
No, if you'd asked me who my choice would have been,
that's another
Del Demps or Monty Williams, it would have been a no-brainer.
I know what your choice would have been, yeah. So, so I wouldn't say it's an entirely lost season because they were very, very entertaining and competitive. It would be more of a lost season, I think, because look, even if they made the play-in or made the playoffs, were they going to get past the first or second round? Probably not.
No.
But what they did do is show you that they could be competitive night after night after night. They could beat really good teams, that Zion could go off, that they were really exciting, that they're not a team that just comes and lays a complete egg and gets blown out all the time. I mean, it happened a couple times. It happened at Brooklyn, I think, a couple weeks ago when KD was coming back in that game. But it doesn't. It seems to me that used to happen more often than it does now. Now every time I go, I feel like I'm going to see some compelling basketball regardless of whether they win or lose.
They're going to be competitive.
Yeah, I might see them blow it at the end, but still it's going to be this compelling kind of progression of basketball through 48 minutes, and you're going to have felt like you were entertained, and you're going to have felt like the team had potential. So I wouldn't, from that perspective, I wouldn't say it was a lost season. I think it's just a disappointing season because you feel like if Zion wasn't going to be, if you're going to let the reins go on him and let him blossom and play him, 30-something minutes a game, and he was going to be an all-star, that you felt like, well, then you probably would make the playoffs, especially if BI continued to play, which he has. Yeah, and they just, I think they had a key injury to a glue guy in Josh Hart, who, he's not a starter, but he's a prominent reserve that seems to come up with all these heady.
He's the heart and soul of the team.
Yeah, heady plays, hustle plays, defensive plays. Timely threes, even though he's not a big scorer. And you lose that guy in the stretch run, and I just think that all that combined, it was an uphill battle for them, and it's not a totally lost year. They made a lot of progress.
Let's talk about off-season, because you went in one direction as you started the season, and then you discovered Point Zion, and then you went in a completely different direction. You built the team one way, feeling that Zion was going to be a guy that was going to get the ball in the middle, and then ultimately you went in a totally different direction. How radically does this roster change in this offseason in your mind?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I can envision a sign and trade with Lonzo Ball. It depends what the market is for him. But I think they have to let him be a restricted free agent, see
what the market's going to bear,
see how bad people want him,
right?
And then they're going to have to, if he signs an offer sheet, then they're going to have to say, well, we're going to match this, but we'll trade him to you.
Right. But you can't take bad contracts back.
Right.
You've got to get. You're not in a position now to be saying we're going to take on bad deals with maybe that are expiring in 2 years, because I think you're on the clock now. I don't think you can go another year with Zion and say, okay, we'll take some bad contracts back. Those will be gone in maybe a year or so, and then we're going to jump into the free agent market. I think if you do that with Lonzo Ball, then you have to get something back that again, either you can utilize in a trade to get better, or that player is going to be a player that can help you now.
Right. Yeah, that's what they have to do with Lonzo. And the thing is, I don't look at Lonzo's situation like Eric Gordon's. I think Lonzo wants to be here, but I think he's kind of he's one of those real just professional basketball player types that isn't too caught up in where he plays. He's just more about the situation. I think he likes the idea of being able to grow with BI and Zion, and who wouldn't? I mean, as a point guard, he could, if he really continues to develop his outside shot, and he's a good passer and a good defender, I mean, he could really develop a memorable connection and legacy with a player like Zion Williamson. So there's an interest in keeping him too. And if they end up keeping him, then it's hard to envision the roster changing that substantively if it's still going to be like Lonzo, BI, and Zion.
And I think you need to bring Josh Hart back.
Yeah, you got to try.
I think you got to do whatever. I mean, again,
maybe his injury makes it more likely that they can.
Even though Marshall has played well in his absence, again, what he brought to the table and the consistency he brought to the table is something that again the Pelicans need. I do like that again they've been having a chance to be able to look at their bench now. I think you see there's some real talent there. I mean, maybe not guys that are going to be able to start for you, but again, when you're filling out this roster, you need guys you can count on that come off that bench They're young. They don't cost a lot, and there's some upside on a lot of these players.
Right.
And then the young players they've drafted up to this point, you got to say that every year they seem like they're getting better. The Jackson Hayes, Kyra Lewis played a lot this year. He's gotten better. You look at the situation with Nico Alexander-Walker as well. They're gotten better. So you hope that, again, they'll take the next step. The question is, what are you going to do in terms of, again, veteran free agents with this team? And I also believe that you still need a point guard. Well, Point Zion has not worked down the stretch when teams, get into the fourth quarter and they start pressing him. You still need a point guard that can move the basketball
So
for you.
Kyra could be that guy
I agree.
if they unload Lonzo.
Yes.
Otherwise, Lonzo and Kyra will have to have some kind of rotation.
Right. I can see Eric Bledsoe at some point being moved.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think he could have been moved before, but his contract is
Right. It's next year. Again,
is
it's
an issue.
$18 million guaranteed, but it's the following year, the $3.9 million guaranteed. So, again, you're probably in a position where you can move him. The one thing I don't like is all this talk they're going to have to attach a first-round pick to move him. Look, he has been the biggest disappointment of this season because you gave up a great player, not just for the organization, but a defender in Drew Holiday for a guy that you thought that it was going to be a drop-off, but not a significant drop-off, and there's been a significant drop-off.
Yeah, there has, and it's not every night because he has good games, but they're intermittent.
But
He hasn't been reliable.
And he's not, more than anything else, he was second-team all-defense last year. He was first-team all-defense the year before. You haven't got that defensive intensity from him that you thought you would get, and that's the main thing. I can understand, look, he's not a great shooter. We knew he wasn't. We knew, he could be aggressive going to the basket. It's on the defensive end that in a lot of cases, you say to yourself, he was supposed to be a lockdown guy, and he wasn't.
Well, it is a new team and a new system, and defense involves a lot of chemistry, so I'm not trying to make excuses for him, but yeah, I mean, he's been a disappointment, I think, to a lot of fans. His teammates stick up for him as probably they should.
As they should.
And there's always a number of factors as to why players' production goes up and down, and some of it has to do with how they mesh with the roster, and some of it has to do with how they mesh with the coach.
Right.
But whatever the case is for him, it doesn't mean that he's a worse player. He just hasn't had that good of a year.
Yeah. Stan Van Gundy. No, to me, again, he deserves at least another year. Okay. With the pandemic and everything else, you got to give him a year, another year. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's impossible to judge him on.
It's not fair. It's just not fair. It's not fair to judge him on this year.
Right.
Okay. I mean, he needs a full off season to institute his defense, his offense, and to be able to get these guys.
Yeah, he was he was hired fairly late in the process just because of how the league calendar worked out.
Right. Sure.
And he was hired. Was it October?
It was late.
Yeah.
It was late, no doubt.
And it was, I think it was October, and then I remember him saying when they had the draft shortly after that he had basically no input in the draft because he was just in the process of still getting hired. And there also may have been some element to where maybe a reason he was hired is because he's deferring to to David Griffin and his team, and that's kind of the model that they're going with. But then, he had no access to these players to really get his system in, on a personal level. So it's a difficult situation.
Right.
As a media guy, you gotta love him.
Right.
He's so genuine.
Yes.
He's so accountable. He's not afraid to criticize himself, and he's not afraid to kind of. He's not disingenuous when he talks about players and what they're doing right or wrong. He's very fair to them, though.
Yeah.
He doesn't throw his players under the bus, but he's not playing politics with the way he talks to us.
You hit on it early, though. Different generation.
Yeah.
How's he relating to the young players? Again, I think that I said this on the radio show. There's an expiration date on Stan Van Gundy.
Yep.
I don't think Stan Van Gundy is the guy that's bringing this team to an NBA championship. But I think he's the bridge guy that, again, gets them to the next step, and then somebody else will take them from there. But that's just my opinion. Got about 3 minutes left. I got to ask you about Kim Mulkey, the hiring of Kim Mulkey at LSU as the women's basketball coach. Your thoughts on that hire?
Sure. Well, I think it's a huge hire. In retrospect, it makes sense because, she's probably at the point in her life where what else is she going to do at Baylor? If she really has personal ties to this area and that job is open, she should take that job. If that job is open and they're willing to pay her commensurate or more with what she's already making,
which she is,
and she can have an elite women's college basketball job near where she grew up at 58 years old, and her parents can be, can move. I think some of the members of her family had moved to Waco, and they can obviously move back here and be where they want to be. It absolutely makes sense. And she said things that I found interesting about, doing things for the state of Louisiana at a time when the state needs it. And I think she's talking about a whole combination of things as it relates to women, as it relates to LSU's issues.
Yes, exactly.
I think she sees an opportunity to have the resurrection of a prominent women's basketball program on the court dovetail with healing as it relates to LSU's recent difficulties with,
sexual harassment, sexual assault,
sexual
and the cover-up.
misconduct, and just having just respect for women.
Yes, I agree. No, 100%.
Yeah.
Right, and if you look at it, it captured the news cycle for about 24 hours, and it deflected from, again, all the problems. But again, she is a strong voice. One of the things I said about on the radio is she commands a room when she walks in. It doesn't matter if it's men or women there. She'll command the room. She will be a huge voice within that university.
Yeah.
On behalf of women.
Right. And she's been extraordinarily important to this state. I mean, she won state championships. She was at Louisiana Tech. She was still a Louisiana girl when she won a gold medal in LA in '84, right?
Right.
So it's great. I mean, I think the most controversial thing she said was, "Let me take this damn mask off." You remember that when she got up there?
Well, the governor concurred because the next day he dropped the mandate.
But theoretically, it wasn't. She was up there by herself.
And she was coming from Texas too.
Yeah. But maybe that wasn't the best message to send in during a pandemic. But other than that, it was fine.
Yeah. Brett Martel, Associated Press. Always appreciate your time. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, great to be on the show again.
Always good to have you. Thanks so much for tuning in. Look, I've said this before. There are so many ways to catch this program now. There's a rebroadcast tonight at 6 p.m. on WLAE-TV. You catch it at 10 o'clock on the Deuce, WLAE-TV 2. On Friday night, 9 o'clock, Pelican Sports Television, 10 o'clock on WLAE, 2 a.m. on Saturday morning on the Deuce, and then we finish up at Saturday afternoon on Pelican Sports Television at 5 p.m. Always at ericasher.com, always on the WLAE-TV YouTube page, always on our social media platforms, at Eric_Asher on Twitter, Eric Asher on Facebook. And we appreciate you checking out the show, whether you're doing it live or, again, on one of our recorded broadcasts, our rebroadcasts. Also, again, you catch me on the radio, 106.1 FM. That is weekdays 4 to 6. That's Nash Icon. You can also listen live at ericasher.com. Also, you can listen live at the iHeartRadio app, the TuneIn Radio app, and our podcast is on all the major podcasting platforms. Anchor is our home base. Spotify, iHeart, Google, Spreaker, you name it, we're on it. So again, you can check out the podcast at your leisure. Also, again, want to thank our fantastic underwriters who make this show possible. Please continue to support these underwriters. We appreciate each and every one of them. We thank them for their support. Also, to the WLAE production staff, which do a great job here producing this program each and every week. Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Tommy Fairley, his last show. Thank you for all you've done for us here on the program. Tommy O'Connor, also Will Ingram, and of course, the best director in the business, William Hill. I'm Eric Asher. Thanks so much for tuning in. For Brett Martel, again, we thank you for listening, and we'll check out next week for another edition, a post-draft edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. Thanks for watching.